In the heart of Ikoyi, where silence was expensive and privacy was power, the Adebayo mansion stood like a fortress of influence. Tall white walls crowned with electric wires surrounded acres of manicured lawns, imported palm trees, and a lagoon-facing terrace that watched Lagos without ever needing to engage it. Inside those gates lived Zara Adebayo, the only daughter of Chief Colonel Adebayo, a man whose name alone could halt contracts, ruin careers, or resurrect fortunes with a single phone call. But what Zara didn't know was that the man she was about to fall in love with was the one person her father would rather see dead than forgiven. Zara had grown up believing she was protected. In truth, she was controlled. From the schools she attended abroad, to the friends vetted by security, to the men subtly discouraged from getting too close. Her life had been carefully curated under the disguise of love. Chief Adebayo never raised his voice, never issued obvious threats. He didn't need to. His authority was quiet, polished, and absolute. At 26, Zara was elegant in a way that came from both breeding and burden. She moved with grace, spoke with caution, and smiled with restraint. Lagos society adored her. Fashion pages loved her. Charity boards flaunted her presence. Politicians greeted her like royalty. Yet every night, when the mansion lights dimmed and the city hummed beyond the gates, Zara felt like a beautiful prisoner in a golden cage. Her mother had died years earlier under circumstances no one ever explained fully. Since then, the house had been ruled by routine, staff whispers, and her father's unspoken rules. One of those rules was simple. Some names were never mentioned. Zara discovered this by accident. It happened on a Saturday evening at a high-profile charity art auction in Ikoyi, an event attended by Nigeria's wealthiest families and their carefully polished heirs. The venue glittered with crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, and conversations layered with hidden agendas. Zara attended out of obligation, dressed in a silk emerald gown, her hair pulled into a low, elegant bun. As usual, she moved through the room politely, exchanging greetings she barely listened to. That was when she saw him. He stood near one of the paintings, not the most expensive piece, not the most dramatic. Yet he studied it with a focus that felt different. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't surrounded by admirers. He was simply present. Their eyes met briefly. Zara looked away first. Then she looked again. This time he smiled, not boldly, not arrogantly, but with a quiet familiarity that unsettled her. Later, as she stood near the refreshment table, she overheard a man greet him. "Good evening, Mr. Adeyemi." Zara froze. The glass in her hand trembled slightly. Adeyemi. The name stirred something deep and uncomfortable, like a locked door in her mind that had been touched too often but never opened. She had heard it once or twice growing up, always abruptly cut short, always followed by silence. That night, on the drive home through the calm Ikoyi streets, Zara asked casually, "Daddy, do you know an Adeyemi family?" The car felt suddenly smaller. Her father didn't turn to look at her. He stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. "No," he said. The driver slowed slightly. After a pause, Chief Adebayo added, his voice colder than before, "Never ask about that name again." Zara swallowed. That was the moment curiosity turned into danger. Over the next few days, she found herself thinking about the man from the auction. His calm confidence. The way he hadn't tried to impress her once he realized who she was. The way his eyes held stories he hadn't told. Against her better judgment, she asked questions. Discreet ones. She learned his name was David Adeyemi, CEO of a fast-growing logistics and infrastructure firm. Educated abroad. Recently returned to Lagos. Respected. Private. Powerful in a way that didn't scream for attention. And most importantly, he lived in Ikoyi. The same Ikoyi. Their second meeting wasn't planned. It happened at a quiet cafe off Alexander Road, early morning, before Lagos traffic woke fully. Zara was alone, dressed casually, enjoying the rare freedom of anonymity. David walked in moments later. Their eyes met again. This time neither looked away. "Funny how Ikoyi keeps circling the same people," he said as he approached. Zara smiled despite herself. "Maybe it's too small for secrets." David's expression changed, just for a second. "Or too powerful to forget them," he replied. They talked about art, about Lagos, about returning home after years away. They avoided last names. Yet something electric passed between them, an attraction sharpened by tension neither fully understood. When Zara returned home that afternoon, she felt lighter and terrified. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't just attraction. This was history waking up. And whatever had happened between their fathers was not finished. It was waiting. Zara tried to forget David Adeyemi. She told herself it was curiosity, nothing more. Ikoyi was small after all. Encounters repeated themselves. Faces reappeared. Meant nothing. But every morning, as the Adebayo mansion came alive with the sound of staff footsteps and security radios, her thoughts drifted back to that cafe. To the way David had spoken. Not like a man seeking favor. Not like someone intimidated by her surname. But like someone who had nothing to prove. That alone made him dangerous. For the first time in years, Zara found herself lingering longer in places she normally rushed through. Art galleries, quiet restaurants, charity meetings she usually delegated. A part of her hoped, without admitting it, that she might run into him again. Ikoyi, obedient as fate, granted her wish. Their third meeting happened at a private business luncheon hosted by a foreign investment firm. Zara attended as her father's representative, dressed in a tailored cream suit, her posture flawless. David was already seated when she arrived. Their eyes locked. This time there was no pretending surprise. "So," David said softly when she took the seat opposite him, "we meet again." Zara raised an eyebrow. Ikoyi must enjoy testing coincidences. David smiled. "Or consequences." That word lingered. Throughout the luncheon, Zara noticed something unsettling. David wasn't just another CEO. The investors listened when he spoke. Senior executives deferred to him. His ideas weren't loud, but they were decisive. More unsettling still, some of the projects mentioned overlapped dangerously close to companies owned by her father. When the meeting ended, David walked her to the exit. "I hope this won't be the last coincidence," he said. Zara hesitated. Every instinct trained into her since childhood screamed, "Don't." Yet something deeper whispered, "Why not?" "It doesn't have to be," she replied. That was how it began. Carefully, quietly, they started meeting away from crowds. Always discreet. Always brief, at least at first. A walk along a shaded street. Coffee before sunrise. Conversations that stretched longer than intended. David never rushed her. He listened. He asked about her, not her father, not her inheritance, not the empire that followed her shadow. Zara found herself laughing more than she had in years. And that terrified her. Because happiness in her world always came with a price. The first warning came disguised as concern. One evening, Zara mentioned David casually at dinner. Her father's fork paused midair. "Who?" Chief Adebayo asked. "David," Zara replied, carefully neutral. "He's involved in a logistics firm. We've crossed paths professionally." Her father's eyes hardened, just slightly, but enough. "You will stop crossing paths," he said. "Daddy, it's just business." Chief Adebayo set his fork down slowly. "There is no just where that family is concerned." Zara's chest tightened. "What family?" Her father stood up. Conversation over. That night, Zara lay awake, replaying the exchange. She realized something then. Her father wasn't angry. He was afraid. The second warning was not subtle. David called her one morning, his voice tight. "My accounts are being audited," he said. Unexpectedly. Zara frowned. "Audits happen." "Yes," he replied. "But not like this. Permits delayed. Shipments stalled. Contracts frozen." A cold realization crept in. "My father," Zara whispered. David exhaled slowly. I didn't want to believe it. But this isn't coincidence anymore. Silence stretched between them. This is why I should walk away, Zara said quietly. David didn't argue. He simply said, Do you want to? Zara closed her eyes. No. That single word sealed their fate. They became more careful, but also more emotionally entangled. Every meeting felt stolen. Every touch carried urgency. They spoke less about the future and more about the present, as if tomorrow was not guaranteed. One rainy night, David finally told her what he had avoided for weeks. Our fathers were once inseparable, he said, standing by the window of his living room, Lagos lights reflecting in the glass. Partners. Brothers, even. Zara's heart pounded. What happened? David turned to her. Something went wrong. Deal. A betrayal, depending on who tells the story. My father never talks about it, Zara admitted. Neither did mine, David said. Until everything was taken from him. The weight of that settled heavily between them. Do you hate him? Zara asked softly. David shook his head. I hate what the past did to us. Weeks passed. Pressure mounted. David's company survived, but barely. Zara's movements were increasingly monitored. Her father's questions sharpened. Then came the night everything changed. Zara stood in her bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hand. Positive. The room spun. Her reflection stared back at her, elegant, composed, terrified. When she told David, he went silent. Then he pulled her into his arms. We'll face this together, he said. But fate was already moving faster than love. That same week, Chief Adebayo received information he had buried for over 2 decades. And when he confronted Zara, his voice did not carry anger, carried dread. Because the war he thought he had ended had only been waiting. And the next truth would destroy everything they thought they knew. The night Chief Colonel Adebayo confronted Zara, the Adebayo mansion felt different. The chandeliers glowed as brightly as ever, the marble floors reflected perfection, and the security guards stood at their posts with military precision. Yet beneath the polished calm, something ancient and dangerous had been disturbed, like a corpse unearthed after decades underground. Zara sat in her father's private study, the room she had avoided since childhood. The air smelled of old leather, polished wood, and secrets. Framed photographs lined the walls, her father shaking hands with presidents, standing beside governors, smiling at international summits. None of the photos showed the man whose name had just torn her life open. Chief Adebayo stood behind his desk, his back to her. His shoulders, once immovable in her eyes, now seemed weighed down by something heavier than power. How long, he asked without turning around, have you been seeing David Adeyemi? Zara swallowed. Lying felt useless. Months. He nodded slowly, as though confirming a calculation he had already made. And you are pregnant. Her breath caught. Yes. For a long moment he said nothing. When he finally turned, his eyes were not burning with rage. They were filled with something far worse. Fear. You must end this immediately, he said. For your own good. And for the child. Zara stood up, anger rising through her fear. You don't get to control this. I love him. The words echoed. Her father flinched. That is exactly the problem, he said quietly. Because love is what destroyed everything the first time. Zara stared at him. What do you mean? He walked to the window, staring out at the lagoon shimmering under the moonlight. David Adeyemi, he said slowly, is not who you think he is. Zara's chest tightened. What are you saying? Chief Adebayo closed his eyes. David Adeyemi is my son. The world tilted. Zara felt the room shrink, the walls press in, the air disappear. She laughed once, a short, broken sound, certain she had misheard. That's not possible, she whispered. Her father turned to her, his voice heavy. Years ago, before you were born, your mother and Tund Adeyemi betrayed me. Zara shook her head violently. Stop. Don't say that. They had an affair, he continued. When I found out, it nearly destroyed me. But public scandal would have ruined everything we had built. So I chose silence. Tears streamed down Zara's face. So you destroyed him instead. Chief Adebayo's jaw tightened. I protected my family. You destroyed a man, Zara cried. And now you want to destroy us too. Her father's voice broke for the first time. You don't understand what it costs to keep power in Lagos. Zara stumbled back, nausea rising. The child inside her suddenly felt heavier, like a living accusation. Brother and sister. The words echoed in her mind until she could barely breathe. David didn't know. That night, Zara left the mansion without telling anyone where she was going. She drove herself to David's house, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. Lagos lights blurred through her tears. Every memory of him, his smile, his touch, his voice, now felt poisoned by truth. When David opened the door, relief crossed his face. You're okay, he said. Zara collapsed into tears. Inside his living room, she told him everything. The words spilled out in fragments. Her father's confession, the affair, the hidden paternity. David listened in stunned silence, his face slowly draining of color. When she finished, he stood up abruptly and paced the room. No, he said. No. This is another lie. Another manipulation. I wish it were, Zara whispered. David laughed bitterly. My father would have told me. Would he? Zara asked. Would you? David stopped pacing. Silence pressed in. The truth arrived not as certainty, but as recognition. Pieces fell into place, his father's bitterness, his refusal to speak of the past, the unexplained protection he had received in certain circles. David sank into a chair. My whole life, he said quietly, has been built on half-truths. Zara reached for him, but he pulled away. We can't continue this, he said. No matter what we feel. I know, she whispered. The pain in his eyes cut deeper than anger. What about the child? David asked. Zara's voice trembled. I don't know. Outside, thunder rolled over Lagos. By morning, the story had begun to leak. Not the truth, but a version of it. Business blogs reported intensified rivalry between Adebayo Group and Adeyemi Holdings. Rumors of sabotage, political pressure. Lagos thrived on scandal, even when it didn't know the full story. Chief Adebayo moved quickly. He froze David out of key contracts entirely. Friends stopped answering David's calls. Allies vanished. David realized then this wasn't protection. This was erasure. When David confronted his father, the old man said nothing for a long time. Then he whispered, I tried to save you from his world. By lying to me, David demanded. Yes, his father replied. Because the truth would have destroyed you. David laughed hollowly. It did anyway. Zara watched helplessly as the man she loved retreated into silence. The city of Lagos kept moving. Cars hung. Deals were signed. Lives were traded like currency. But beneath the noise, two families unraveled. And Zara faced an impossible decision. Stay and become a pawn in her father's war. Or leave and raise a child born from a love that should never have existed. By the end of that week, Zara packed a single suitcase. She left Ikoyi before dawn. David watched her car disappear from his gate, knowing he might never see her again. What neither of them knew was this: the past was not finished with them. And the most devastating twist had not yet been revealed. Zara's flight left Lagos before sunrise, but Ikoyi did not sleep. From the windows of the Adebayo mansion, lights burned through the night as lawyers, fixers, and old allies came and went. Chief Colonel Adebayo sat alone in his study long after they had all left, staring at a document he had not looked at in over 26 years. A DNA report. Folded. Yellowed. Forgotten but never destroyed. For the first time since Zara was a child, Chief Adebayo's hands trembled. Across town, David Adeyemi stood on his balcony, the humid Lagos air heavy on his skin. The city below looked unchanged, generators humming, cars gliding through familiar routes, but his life felt unrecognizable. He had lost Zara, not to distance, not to another man, but to blood. And yet, something would not let him rest. Too many things didn't add up. His father, Tunde Adeyemi, had always been many things, bitter, broken, guarded, but never careless. If David truly belonged to Colonel Adebayo, how had the truth survived this long without slipping? Why now? And why did Chief Adebayo seem afraid instead of victorious? David returned inside and opened the old metal trunk his father kept locked beneath the stairs. He had avoided it for years out of respect. Tonight, respect felt like a luxury he could no longer afford. Inside were old documents, newspaper clippings, and photographs. Two young men standing shoulder to shoulder, smiling like brothers. Colonel Adebayo and Tunde Adeyemi. Untouchable. At the bottom of the trunk, David found a sealed envelope. It was addressed to his father, and never opened. David's heart pounded as he tore it open. Inside was a second DNA test, and the results were unmistakable. Probability of paternity, 0%. David Adeyemi was not Colonel Adebayo's son. David's knees buckled. The lie was bigger than he imagined. By mid-morning, Chief Adebayo received a call he had dreaded for decades. Tunde Adeyemi is dead. The words hit harder than expected. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, despite the war, Colonel felt something close to grief. Not for the man Tunde had become, but for the brother he had once been. The past surged forward with brutal clarity. The affair, the rage, the decision to bury truth with power. But the DNA test in his drawer burned like a curse. Because the real secret was this. Zara's mother had never betrayed him. The affair had been a lie manufactured, planted, and exploited by political enemies who wanted Colonel and Tunde divided. And Colonel, blinded by pride and fear of scandal, had believed it without demanding proof. Tunde Adeyemi had paid the price. And now so had their children. Chief Adebayo collapsed into his chair. He had destroyed an innocent man, and driven his daughter away over a lie. By the time Zara landed abroad, the truth was already chasing her. She sat alone in a small apartment she had rented under a different name, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Every sound startled her. Every thought circled back to David. When her phone rang, she almost ignored it. Almost. Zara, David's voice said, rough with emotion. You need to listen to me. Everything we were told. It was wrong. Her breath caught. David, please. I'm not his son, he said. And you're not my sister. Silence. Then Zara began to cry, not in relief, but in anger so deep it shook her entire body. They ruined us, she whispered. No, David replied softly. They lied to protect power. And power chose itself over truth. Within hours, Chief Adebayo boarded a private jet. Not to chase Zara, but to confess. He found her 2 days later, standing on the balcony of her rented apartment, staring at a city that was not Lagos. She did not hug him. She did not shout. She simply listened. When he finished, she asked one question. Why didn't you check the truth before destroying them? Chief Adebayo had no answer. Only regret. David arrived the following day. The reunion was quiet. No dramatic music. No running embrace. Just two people standing before a future fractured by choices they didn't make. But the damage was already done. David's company was crippled beyond repair. Zara had lost faith in the world she came from. And the child growing inside her would be born into a legacy stained by pride and silence. They sat together that evening, hands intertwined. We could go back, David said. Fight them. Rebuild. Zara shook her head. Some wars, she said, cost too much to win. That night, they made a decision that shocked everyone who would later hear it. They would not return to Ikoyi. They would not reclaim their positions. They would walk away from the empires built on lies. And in doing so, they would end the war their fathers started. What they didn't know was that Lagos does not forgive those who abandon power. And the final cost of walking away had yet to be paid. Lagos did not react kindly to abandonment. When Zara Adebayo disappeared from Ikoyi society, tongues loosened. When David Adeyemi withdrew from boardrooms and public appearances, investors panicked. And when Chief Colonel Adebayo stepped back from deals he once dominated, the city sensed weakness. In Lagos, weakness invited predators. Within weeks, blogs whispered theories. Some said Zara had been hidden away because of a scandalous pregnancy. Others claimed David had been ruined financially by a silent coup. No one knew the truth, but everyone felt the shift. And shifts in Lagos never went unanswered. David and Zara settled quietly in a coastal city far from Nigeria's elite circles. They lived modestly, their identities stripped of surnames that once commanded respect. Zara learned the rhythms of ordinary life, buying groceries without aides, attending prenatal checkups alone, waiting in lines. It was humbling. It was freeing. But peace was fragile. David took up consulting work under a different name, careful not to draw attention. Zara avoided social media entirely. Their days were quiet, built around cautious hope and the steady growth of the life inside her. Then the first warning arrived. A man approached David outside a cafe, speaking softly as though offering friendly advice. "Lagos does not forget its own," he said. "You may have walked away, but others lost money because of you." David said nothing. 2 nights later, their apartment door was tampered with. Nothing was taken. The message was clear. They were being watched. Back in Lagos, Chief Adebayo felt the consequences of confession. He had exposed the lie, but not publicly. He tried to undo the damage quietly, using the same tools that had once destroyed Tunde Adeyemi. Did not work. Too many enemies had waited too long. A boardroom revolt forced him to relinquish control of his companies. Political allies withdrew. Men who once bowed now negotiated his exit. Colonel Adebayo had built his empire on silence. Now silence was swallowing him. One evening, as he sat alone in the mansion that once symbolized invincibility, he realized the truth he had avoided all his life. Power forgives nothing. Meanwhile, the pressure on David intensified. An old associate from Lagos reached out, insisting on a meeting. "It's about your father," the man said. Against Zara's advice, David agreed. He returned alone. The meeting took place in a private lounge at a hotel near Ikoyi, neutral ground, or so it seemed. The men waiting for him were not business partners. They were collectors. "You walked away from debts that were never yours to abandon," one of them said calmly. "Your father's past did not die with him." David understood then. Walking away had not erased obligations, it had transferred them. "They want me to return," David told Zara that night. "Not to rebuild. To take the fall." Zara's voice trembled. "You can't." "If I don't," David replied, "they'll come for you. Or the baby." The decision arrived like a verdict. 2 days later, David left before sunrise. He did not tell Zara where he was going. Only that he loved her. Only that some debts demanded more than money. In Lagos, David walked back into the world he had sworn to leave. He surrendered quietly, meeting men who once feared him. Deals were struck behind closed doors. Stories were shaped. And a narrative was agreed upon. A week later, the headlines broke. Former CEO David Adeyemi detained in major financial probe. Lagos consumed it eagerly. Zara read the news from a small apartment, her hands shaking, her heart breaking. She tried to contact him. No response. Days passed. Then weeks. And then the message arrived, delivered through an intermediary. "You and the child are safe. Do not return. Do not look back." Zara screamed that night. In Ikoyi, Chief Adebayo watched the same news in silence. He understood immediately what David had done. And it destroyed him. For the first time in his life, Colonel Adebayo did not use influence. He did not make calls. He let the system run its course. because any interference would expose Zara. And David had chosen sacrifice. Months later, Zara gave birth to a baby boy. She named him Tund. Not after blood, but after truth denied too late. Years passed. David remained a ghost in public records, neither convicted nor free. A man erased by agreement. A name frozen in legal limbo. Chief Colonel Adebayo sold his mansion and left Nigeria quietly. No farewell. No legacy celebration. And Zara raised her son far from Ikoyi, teaching him a lesson Lagos had taught her too late. That power demands payment, and sometimes love pays it in full. But the story was not over. Because the final truth, the one that would redefine sacrifice, forgiveness and freedom, was still waiting. 10 years later, Ikoyi looked the same. The same polished roads. The same guarded gates. The same quiet arrogance of wealth that pretended it had never bled. But the people had changed. The Adebayo mansion no longer belonged to the Adebayo family. The white walls still stood, but the soul that once ruled from within had vanished. New owners occupied the estate. New money, new ambitions, unaware of the ghosts that lingered in its corridors. On a warm Sunday afternoon, a woman stood across the street from the gate. Zara Adeyemi. She no longer carried the Adebayo name. Time had softened her beauty, not diminished it. She wore simplicity now, a linen dress, flat sandals, no security detail. Beside her stood a 10-year-old boy, observant and calm. His dark eyes taking in the world with curiosity sharpened by wisdom far beyond his age. "Is this the place?" he asked. "Yes," Zara replied softly. "This is where I grew up." The boy nodded, as if filing the information away. They did not enter. They did not need to. Some places only needed to be acknowledged, not revisited. They walked away, blending into the quiet elegance of Ikoyi. Just another mother and son to anyone watching. What no one knew was that Zara had returned for closure, not reconciliation. Because the truth had finally come full circle. Months earlier, Zara had received a letter. No return address. Only a single sentence written in familiar handwriting. "He is free." Attached was a train ticket from Europe. Zara had read the letter 3 times before allowing herself to breathe. David Adeyemi was alive. Not imprisoned. Not broken. Just erased. He had fulfilled the agreement that had cost him everything. His name, his career, his public existence. In exchange, Zara and their son had been left untouched. Now the world had moved on. And so had he. They met in a small coastal town, far from Lagos and its shadows. There was no dramatic reunion. No tears at first. Just 2 people sitting across from each other, studying the faces time had reshaped. David looked older, leaner. His eyes carried depth, loss, acceptance, peace. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said. "I wouldn't miss this," Zara replied. They spoke for hours. About the years lost. About the sacrifices made. About the silence that had kept them alive. David met his son that evening. Tund studied him quietly, then asked, "Did you go away to protect us?" David nodded. "Yes." Tund thought for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you." In that moment, every price David had paid felt justified. They did not reunite as lovers. That chapter had closed long ago. What remained was deeper. Respect. Forgiveness. A bond stronger than romance. David chose to stay in the town under his new identity. Zara returned to her life, visiting when she could. They raised their son together, not as a traditional family, but as something honest. Something free. Back in Nigeria, Chief Colonel Adebayo died quietly. No state funeral. No headlines. Just a short obituary noting his former achievements. Zara attended alone. She stood by his grave, holding no anger, only clarity. He had been powerful. He had been wrong. And he had paid the price. Years later, Tund stood before a group of young students at a leadership conference. Not in Ikoyi, not among elites, but in a modest hall filled with hope. He spoke without notes. "My parents taught me something Lagos doesn't like to admit," he said. That power without truth is borrowed. And borrowed things always return with interest. The room was silent. My father gave up his name so I could have a future. My mother gave up an empire so I could grow without fear. He paused. They lost everything. But I gained freedom. The audience rose to their feet. No one knew his lineage. No one needed to. Because legacies are not measured by buildings or balance sheets. They are measured by what survives when power is stripped away. As the sun set over Ikoyi that evening, the city glowed as it always had, beautiful, dangerous, seductive. But somewhere beyond its reach, a different kind of wealth thrived. One built on truth, on sacrifice, on love that chose freedom over dominance. Power can silence truth, but it can never erase it. The choices we refuse to confront today become the burdens our children carry tomorrow. True wealth is not what you control, but what you are willing to let go of, for love, for truth, and for the future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly give it a thumbs up, tell us what you think of the story and where you are watching from in the comment. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Bye for now.